Today, we are wrapping up this series we've been in for the last couple of months now, called In the End, where we've been walking through the last two chapters of the book of Revelation. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and open to Revelation chapter 22. We're going to start in verse 12 in just a moment. But before we do, I kind of want to set up where we're going today, because the ending of Revelation is not what you may expect. Which, by the way, is par for the course, because Revelation itself, as we've seen, is not always what we expect it to be. You know, many of us grew up thinking Revelation was a timeline of when Jesus was coming back or when the rapture is going to happen or who the Antichrist is. And in reality, Revelation is none of that. It's a letter written by a guy named John to a group of first century Christians who were experiencing some pretty severe persecution. And because of that, they were tempted to compromise their faith. Now, what does compromise look like? Well, for some of them, it was, let me just make my relationship with Jesus private and personal. Let it not impact how I live my life outwardly, because then I can avoid persecution. For some people, it was pursuing comfort over their commitment. For some people, it looked like walking away from the faith altogether. But certainly these people were experiencing some very real fears of being frozen out of the marketplace, being arrested, some of them even killed. And so John writes this letter to reveal what is happening spiritually behind the scenes, to encourage them to remain faithful. Now, I think it's worth pointing out, just because you know what's happening spiritually behind the scenes doesn't mean that everything's all of a sudden better, right? Like, they're still going to experience that persecution, but it's this idea that it would bring about some kind of transformation in their lives. And as a result, where he's going to end the letter is not by just wrapping a pretty bow on everything. It's not just going to be a period at the end of the story. The way John ends this letter is with a commissioning. He wants them to have this comfort of knowing what's happening spiritually behind the scenes so they can continue to live on purpose. And by the way, I think this is beautiful, because all of us know inherently human beings only thrive when we feel like we have purpose and meaning in our everyday life. There's a famous Holocaust survivor named Viktor Frankl. And he had been a part of these work concentration camps. And he noticed something, a pattern that appeared very early on. He could tell the people who were most likely to survive were the ones who felt like they had something to live for. They had a family member they wanted to be reunited with. They had work that was unfinished. They had a calling that they still felt led to do. Those were the people who would fight tooth and nail to survive. It was the moment that people gave up, felt like there was no hope or no purpose, that those were the ones who couldn't continue on. And in fact, he made this very famous quote. He said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how." If you have a why to live, you can bear any how. If there's meaning and purpose behind what you're doing, you can make it through almost any situation and circumstance, which, if you think about what this man experienced, he saw people literally worked to death, stripped naked, left out in the freezing cold. And because these people had purpose, they were able to persevere. Now, we don't know what it's like to make it through the Holocaust. We don't even know what it's like to be these first century Christians who are suffering persecution. But I think all of us know that life without purpose feels hopeless. In fact, I don't know if you ever heard of these things called blue zones in the world. You ever hear of these before? There are people who live in the blue zones. They tend to live much longer than anybody else in the world. And so they're always doing studies trying to figure out what makes these people so different. And what they found is there's no singular diet or kind of exercise plan. Really what it boils down to is they have a commitment to community, and they have a strong sense of purpose and meaning in their life. In fact, according to some studies, people who feel like they have no purpose or meaning in life live 3 decades shorter lives than those who do feel like they have meaning and purpose. In fact, doctors will refer to something sometimes called the retirement cliff, where in the first year of retirement, 40% of those who retired report feeling depression and anxiety because they no longer feel like they have purpose when they wake up each and every day. By the way, it's actually interesting because we see this in the church as well. There's a fascinating study that Lifeway and Barna did. There's really 2 parts to it that stand out to me. The first one is that people who serve in any capacity at church, whether you're holding a baby in the nursery, whether you're holding a door open at the front, you're running sound, if you serve in any capacity, those people report significantly less symptoms of anxiety and depression than the general population, all because they serve in any capacity. But the second part of this is even more fascinating to me, because it said people who attend church regularly but do not serve. So the people who are there every Sunday but do not serve experience higher levels of loneliness and more spiritual frustration than the general population does. What that tells me is that people don't need to hear another inspirational sermon. People don't need to hear the latest worship song. We were created on purpose for a purpose, and when we don't live that out, we get stuck. And so we get to the end of Revelation, and it's important for John to kind of underscore the point. There is purpose and meaning in what we are called to do. That's what we're going to pick up this morning in Revelation chapter 22. As we jump into verse 12, these are Jesus' words to the church. He says, "Look, I am coming soon, and my reward is with me to repay each person according to his work. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. Blessed are those who wash their robes, so that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter the city by the gates. Outside are the dogs, the sorcerers, the sexually immoral, the murderers, the idolaters, and everyone who loves and practices falsehood. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to attest these things to you for the churches. I am the root and descendant of David, the bright and morning star." So Jesus begins his final words to the church. He says, "Look, I am coming to you soon." It's interesting that word there for coming to you is the Greek word aku or erku. And this appears multiple times in this passage. Every time it appears, it's actually an invitation. Now, this first one is an invitation from Jesus to the church when he says, "Look, I'm coming to you soon." Now, if you're like me and you hear that word soon, like, okay, wait a second. This text was written 2,000 years ago. Jesus said he's coming back soon, so did we miss it when he came back? Was Jesus lying to us when he said he would be soon, but he's waited 2,000 years? What on earth is going on here? Well, it's important to remember that these are texts that are thousands of years old. And so the way that they approach words is different from us. So we hear the word soon, we think like, hey, it's right about to happen. We're all like toddlers, right? The toddler comes up to the parent and says, "Hey, can we go to the park today?" And we say, "In a minute." And what does a toddler do? They come back 1 minute later and say, "It's been a minute. Can we go to the park now?" You're like, "No, that's not what I meant. I just meant it is going to happen shortly." In the same way, all throughout the Old Testament even, when prophets use this word, they will say things like salvation is near. God's rescue is soon. And even in the Old Testament, there's 400 years of silence in between the end of the prophets and the entrance of Jesus. Essentially, what they are saying is, listen, this is going to happen. Everything that needs to happen in order for the prophecy to be fulfilled has already happened. You can take it to the bank. Like, it is a guarantee that Jesus is coming back. By the way, I think that's why we have to be very careful. When we come to Revelation, we're not trying to discern the times to see when Jesus is coming back, because everything that needs to happen for him to come back has already come back, right? It's going to happen. And along with that, there's this implied sense of urgency that if Jesus is coming back, then we better make sure that we're ready. Right? It's like a teenager who's been left at home and their parents say, "Hey, we're going out for dinner. When we come back, I want your room to be clean, dishwasher unloaded. I want the living room vacuumed." And what does that teenager do? They probably do nothing until the Life 360 alert shows up that your parents are in the neighborhood. And then all of a sudden, what does that kid do? "I've got to do everything really quick. There's a sense of urgency because my parents are almost back." There should be this sense of urgency in our lives to remain faithful to Jesus, because he could come back tomorrow. It may be 1,000 years, but he is coming back. So we want to live with that urgency and intentionality each and every day. Now notice Jesus says when he does return, what's going to happen? He will judge people based on their works. Now this is a hot topic in theology, because you say, well, wait a second, aren't there some passages that say you are saved by grace through faith, not any works that you've done? And here it says Jesus is going to judge according to works. So which is it? Are we saved by grace through faith, or do we display these works? The answer is yes. It is both. Because there is nothing we can do to save ourselves, right? Jesus, through his death and resurrection, defeated sin and death, has ushered us into this new way of life. If we could do that on our own, don't you think we would have done it already? Like, I really want to be like, if I could just be like Jesus, if I could be set free from sin and death, I would have done it. But I can't. And so I depend on Jesus to do what only he can do. But when I trust him and enter into a relationship with him, doesn't that change how I behave in the world? Like any kind of relationship that you're in, it changed how you act and behave. My wife and I have been married for over 18 years. Now, before we were married, I could flirt with whoever I wanted to flirt with. I could date whoever I wanted to date. But now that we are married, like, I'm not flirting with anybody else. I don't even know how to flirt, to be honest with you. And it's not like on Thursday night, she said, what are you up to today? And I say, I'm taking Rosalita out for dinner. And by the way, apologies if your name is Rosalita. I was trying to figure out a name that wouldn't make things awkward. Right? I don't get to do those things. Why? Because I'm committed to my wife, so I'm forsaking all others. Okay, now that's kind of the negative aspect. I'm committing here, I'm forsaking that. There's also a positive aspect. Because I love my wife and committed to her, then I want her needs met. I want to see her grow and flourish. And so my wife is an extrovert. She loves to be around people and to go out and have adventures. And I'm around people all the time for my work. And so sometimes what I want to do is I just want to sit in my bed and watch Survivor on my phone. That's what I want to do. But because I love my wife, I will withgo my desires so that she can have her desires met. In the same way, when we commit to following Jesus, we are forsaking the other things that want our attention and affection. And by the way, there's no shortage of things that want our affection and devotion. Things like our work, our goals, our finances, even sometimes our kids. There are all these, everyone in the world you know has an agenda for your life. But when we commit to follow Jesus, we're letting him set that agenda and forsaking the others. But at the same time, we're committing to Jesus. We want to grow in our relationship with him. We want to do the things that are going to help our relationship grow and flourish. That, by the way, is why we do things like read our Bible and pray and fast. It's because we say all the time here at Bridgepoint, the things we do something to us, right? The more you do things, the more it changes your desires. Man, my wife is a saint, because when we first got married, I was like the most disgusting human being on the planet. Because I grew up in a house where my mom took care of my every need. She did my laundry. She cooked my meals. And so because of that, I was a slob. My wife would walk into the bathroom, and there'd be like a plate of half-eaten spaghetti, sitting in there. Which, number one, why am I eating spaghetti in the bathroom? I don't know. And then why would I just leave my dish there? So it was constant struggle. A few years into our marriage, I really felt convicted that I needed to step up and make sure that I am serving my family well. And the best way I thought at the time, a simple step I can do this, is by doing the dishes. Do I like doing the dishes? Is this something I enjoy doing? Absolutely not. This is a forced act of discipline to show my love to my family. But now, over the years, it's grown to the point where I can't go to bed at night until the kitchen is clean. I need the dishes done. By the way, I load the dishwasher better than anybody else anyway. Have you ever see that thing? It says there's two types of people in a marriage. One person who loads the dishwasher like a Tetris master, and one person who loads it like a blind squirrel. I am the Tetris master. I can fit all the dishes we own into the dishwasher at once. Now, is there anything inherent in Matt Spear that makes me love washing the dishes? No. But because it's a practice I've implemented in my life day in and day out, it's become a part of who I am. And when we pray, when we fast, when we read our Bible, when we Sabbath, the goal is not to get good at those things. The goal is that those become anchors then that keep us rooted in our relationship with Jesus and continue to grow our devotion and affection for him. Does this make sense? It's something that blew my mind years ago. In the Gospel of John, Jesus says, if you love me, you will obey my commands. And for years, I read that almost like a toxic relationship. Well, if you really loved me, you would do this for me. But if you actually read the way this is constructed in the Greek, the way we should read this is, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. So the goal isn't just to try to do more and more to impress God, but if you fall more and more in love with him, those things will come naturally to you. So we do these things to anchor us in our love for Jesus. And I use that word anchor very intentionally, because all of us, our natural tendency is to drift, right? And by the way, do we ever drift towards Jesus? Right? We don't accidentally wake up one day and we're like, boom, I've become like Jesus. How did that happen? We live in a culture, we live in a world where the current pushes us away from him. So we don't just get to put it in neutral and chill. We're either moving towards Jesus or away from him. Back in 2012, there's a guy in Mexico named Jose Alvarez. and he went out onto his boat. Him and his friend had a 23-foot boat. There was no top on it. They were going to go deep sea fishing. So they had planned out this whole 20-hour trip. They were going to catch marlin and shark, and they have a great time. They actually brought a cooler with them. They said they caught over 1,000 pounds worth of fish. But as they were getting ready to head back home, they get caught in a storm. This storm lasts for 5 days. There's no cover on the boat. So what happens to all their electronics? They're fried. The engine fails. Right before their walkie-talkie gives out, they're able to make one distress call that, hey, here's where we are and we need help. But when the engine dies, they start to drift. And by the time people came to their coordinates, they had drifted away. 13 months later, Jose washes up on shore of the islands that are like, he's more than halfway to Australia now. He had drifted 6,700 miles. And I am convinced that one day this is going to be a Netflix movie. And I want you to remember, you heard it here first. Now, what happens? When you drift, it'll always take you further than you ever anticipated on being. I've said for years, nobody wakes up one day and says, you know what? Today's the day I'm going to murder somebody. Today's the day I'm going to embezzle millions of dollars. It's always these small steps along the way. And so what Jesus is inviting us to do is a life of faithfulness where we are anchored in him. So when we implement these practices, it keeps us close to the one we love, grows our love, commitment, and devotion to him. Does this make sense? Now that's the first of 3 invitations that we're going to see today. The next invitation is in the very next verse, verse 17. Both the Spirit and the bride say, come, or eku. So first Jesus says, hey, I'm coming soon. There's a sense of urgency there. He's saying, all right, this is an invitation to faithfulness. Now the church is saying to Jesus, yes, we need you. Come on. Like be with us. They're inviting Jesus to be a part of this community because without Jesus, the church cannot be the church. In fact, in this one simple request, I see like several different things pop up. The first is like, there's an aspect of worship here, right? Like how many of our worship songs are Jesus, come be with us, come meet with us, we need you. It's an act of worship to invite Jesus into whatever situation. It's an act of worship to invite him into our community. It's also a cry for community, not just with one another, but we'd have that relationship and community with Jesus himself. And also implicit in that is like, hey, there's a mission that we have to accomplish, and we cannot do what God has called us to do apart from Jesus. Or like the message of the gospel is not you do more and you will accomplish more. It's like, hey, we need Jesus in order to do what he's called us to do. And by the way, those 3 things, worship, community, and mission, those make up something. You guys ready for your theological word of the day? It's our ecclesiological minimum. You're like, Matt, what on earth is that word? Listen, I dare you, try to slip this into your Thanksgiving conversation, like just for fun, and report back to me how it goes. The word ecclesiology. Ology is the study of the ecclesia, the church. So an ecclesiological minimum, it's what is the minimum things that must be present in order for a church to exist? Like, what is church? We say church is the people. But if I'm sitting at McDonald's eating a sausage biscuit and having a coffee, I'm having a good time, but is that church? And if we get a bunch of people together and we're playing board games, we're all together, but is that church? See, what I think Scripture teaches is church happens when worship, community, and mission all overlap together. See, if you have community and mission but not worship, that's just a civic organization, right? We have community, we're on mission together, but worship is key. There's something fascinating that happened in the late 2000s, early 2010s, where there's a rise in something called the new atheism. So this is atheism as proposed by people like Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris. And so this is like a very big fad for a while. By the way, interestingly enough, and this is a sermon for another time, but now even Richard Dawkins himself, one of the fathers of new atheism, says, I consider myself a cultural Christian. Like, make no mistake, he doesn't believe in Jesus, but he does love what Christians do and living in a culture where Christians are doing their thing. And so they see the benefits of Jesus, even if they don't want Jesus himself. I find that fascinating. But along with the rise of this new atheism, you have people who are leaving the church, becoming atheists, and they're feeling lonely. They're feeling aimless. They're wandering. And so all of a sudden, these things pop up called atheist churches. Now, what happens in an atheist church? They show up to a building much like this. They sit in chairs much like you're sitting in. They sing songs. They're not worship songs, but they sing songs. Somebody gets up on the stage. There's a talk on how to be a good person. And then they leave and spend some time hanging out in the lobby before they head off to Mexican food for lunch. And I remember reading this and thinking, wow, that's fascinating. Is that any different than what we do when we gather around to worship Jesus? Do we just come and sing songs and hear talk about how to be a good person and go throughout our lives? And see, for me, that worship aspect is key. Like, if we're not here for Jesus, then we might as well be doing something different. Like, if we're not here for Jesus, we should be at brunch right now. Isn't brunch a glorious thing? Like, if we're not here for Jesus, then we're just wasting our time. That worship of him is what sets the church apart from any other different group or organization. This is why our church is all about being with Jesus and becoming like Jesus and being sent by Jesus. And I hope that when you leave here today, that if you don't remember anything else, you just remember that it's all about Jesus. Worship is key. But if you have worship and mission without community, that's not really church either, is it? Because we can worship in the car on our drive to work, and we can serve at a soup kitchen or with adults with special needs. Those are great things. But without that community, it's not church. In fact, the community that's described in Scripture, if you read Acts chapter 2, it's called koinonia, is the Greek word. And it's this idea that they would sell everything and have everything in common. Like the type of community that if you had a need, I'll sell my car to pay your medical bills. Like, that's the type of community that it's painting. And to a lesser degree, we'll call this refrigerator rights or pantry rights. And listen, I have a love-hate relationship with this type of community because we have 3 boys, and they have a bunch of friends in the neighborhood, and their friends have turned our house into their home. Again, love-hate relationship, because on a week like this, where there's no school, they will be in and out the front door all day long. We always wanted to be the house that our kids' friends wanted to hang out until the kids' friends wanted to hang out there. But here's the thing. When they come in and they feel like home, what's the first place they go to? The pantry. What kind of snacks do you get this week, Mr. Matt? My grocery bill goes up 400% these weeks, so please pray for us this week. Now, listen, it hurts financially, but it is beautiful to see that type of community and relationships that are growing with my kids and their friends and even with us. This is the type of community that we want to have. If you get a call at 2 a.m. that rocks your world, who is it that you're reaching out to for support? When you have medical bills that you don't think you can pay, do you have people you can be open and honest with that might even be willing to help meet your need? If your car breaks down, you don't know how you're going to survive, do you have somebody else who says, you can use my car? That's real community. That's what the church is called to be. But worship and community without mission is just selfishness. It's immaturity. Right? We worship because we love God, and we find this community because our needs are met. But we want to keep this to ourselves. That totally misses the mark of what we're called to do. Now, by the way, at Bridgepoint, we've been very intentional over the years, because I think about a gathering like this. By the way, I'm not anti-gathering on Sunday morning. When we gather together, do we worship? I hope the answer is yes. Like, we do worship. You know, is there community? I think there's the beginnings of community, right? But very seldom do we, like, people walk in and say, how are you doing? And you just, like, blurt out all of this stuff that you're dealing with in the moment, right? Like, there's the beginnings of it, but it's not full community. Is there mission? Well, there's mission in the sense that, like, hey, we might be inviting people or they might hear the gospel, but are you on mission right now? In fact, this is why, like, we've put all our eggs in, like, the life group basket. Like, I believe that what happens in our groups, we have restructured all of them. So every single week there's worship, community, and mission. There's worship in the time that you're praying with one another, sharing with one another, bearing one another's burdens. There's community as we gather around food or start to open up about our lives. There's mission in the sense that every single week we're talking about how we've blessed other people, holding other people accountable, brainstorming ideas for how can we live on mission each and every day. Because to me, that looks a whole lot more like the church described in the New Testament than this gathering on Sunday morning. Again, hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that this gathering is bad. What I'm saying is if worship, community, and mission are going to intersect, it's in that environment, and we have to invite Jesus to be a part of it. Because in that environment, Jesus is going to work to shape and change us to be more like him. There's one more invitation, though. The back half of verse 17 says, let anyone who hears say, come. Let the one who is thirsty come. Let the one who desires to take the water of life freely. So the first invitation is from Jesus to the church, an invitation to faithfulness, be ready. The second invitation from the church to Jesus, like, yes, please meet us here. The third invitation is from Jesus and the church to a world that is in desperate need of his love, that says, hey, whatever you're longing for, whatever you're thirsting for, those needs will only be met in Jesus. Come taste and see that the Lord is good. It's an invitation from the church to the world to begin a relationship with Jesus. In the last few years, I think our culture has shifted pretty drastically, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I wonder if some of you can resonate. I feel like we live in a culture now where the natural disposition, we start with a place of distrust of institutions. And I think we could point back to it, and maybe it goes back further than this, but in the financial crisis of 2008, all of a sudden we became very skeptical of big businesses and corporations. There's been enough failures of government over the years that we're skeptical of government. There's certainly been failures of churches. We're even skeptical of the church. And so we live in this time now where people just don't believe something just because you say it. I mean, how often have you looked at something on the internet and thought it was true, and a quick Google says, nope, that was fake news, that was AI, that wasn't real. We just live in a culture of distrust. So if we were to go back maybe 30, 40 years, we live in a culture where the process for faith looked like you believe first, then you belong, and then you start to behave like Jesus. By the way, the great Billy Graham revivals were built in this type of culture, right? You come to hear the gospel, you believe it. He wants to get you plugged into a good gospel teaching church, so you're going to belong somewhere, and then through that belonging and discipleship, you start to behave more like Jesus. All that is great, by the way, but we don't live in that world anymore because people distrust big institutions. I think we live in a culture now where people are going to have to belong somewhere before they're able to believe. They're going to have to belong to a type of community that shows we actually practice what we preach before I'm willing to believe the words out of your mouth. A couple weeks ago, we had Baptism Sunday here at Bridgepoint. And I love Baptism Sunday because the people who are taking that step get a chance to share their own words about why they're committing to follow Jesus. And I know because we have two different services and some people are traveling, you don't always get to hear these people and their testimony. So this morning I wanted to share what Ryan Stokowski said before his baptism. These are his words, and the reason I'm sharing them is because he's a perfect example of somebody who believed in Jesus, but life happened. He was disappointed and discouraged because God didn't do what he thought God was going to do. He walked away from the faith. It was actually through a community that he came back to his belief. So this is what Ryan said about his decision to follow Jesus. I was lucky enough to be born and raised by two loving parents that instilled Christian principles and beliefs early on in my life. We went to church on Sundays, and I attended a Catholic school from kindergarten through high school. You'd think that growing up around the faith and having theology classes once a day would create a strong foundation to build a personal relationship with God. That's at least what I thought. Then life threw a curveball, and my mother passed away from cancer just before my freshman year of high school. I wanted to blame the world, and most of all, I blamed God. People like to say God has a plan, and I took that as if it was God's plan to take her away to create a more desirable outcome in the future. If that was the God I was following, I decided I was better off doing things my own way. I kept most of the core principles I was raised on, like how to treat others and how to behave. But when you have your own sense of morality without a compass to correct you, it's easy to justify any action you feel like doing in the moment. That said, I was successful in college, moved from Michigan to Georgia to start my career, and was very successful my first year. And while I was successful in my professional life, my personal life felt lacking. It caused me to look back at people in my life, and I saw that the ones who truly seemed happy and content within themselves had a relationship with God. So I decided maybe I needed to recalibrate my understanding of God and try going to church again. Bridgepoint was the first place I walked into, and I never left. The people here have helped me look at my mother's passing and realize God didn't have a master scheme to take her away, but he was there with my father and I during our pain. He gave my father an amazing new wife, and I gained another amazing role model and a couple extra siblings. Since coming to Bridgepoint, I felt a strong community. I've met my wife, and I found that peace within myself that I felt I was missing when I moved down here 5 years ago. My baptism is my commitment to Christ in front of this community, my friends, my family, and my wife. And I will work to live a Christ-centered life, give back to others in this community, and lead any future family God blesses me with the best that I can. It's a beautiful picture. Because I remember when Ryan came on his first Sunday, because Ryan came right after COVID, and that was any time a guest came, we're like, ooh, a guest came to church today. And so I remember like meeting him for the first time, and I saw him start to serve at some of our outreach events. I even was in Freedom Group with him. And what I love about Ryan's story is it's not like he came in one day and God zapped him with a lightning bolt, and like in a moment everything changed. He became a part of a community that allowed him to lower his walls to believe again. And I think that there are so many of us here today who have people in our lives that we've been praying for, we've shared the gospel with. But what if the best way to reach them isn't just to share the gospel? And I am all for that, but to invite them to belong to a community that displays the gospel as much as it proclaims the gospel. There's 3 invitations in this passage. If I were to take these and kind of turn them into 3 challenges for us today, the first invitation, the challenge would be ready. Like, be ready for when he comes back. He can come back tomorrow. He can come back way after I've already passed on from this life. But when he comes back, I don't want to be found drifting thousands of miles away. I want to be rooted. I want to be anchored. We ought to live our lives every day ready for Jesus to come back. The second thing, we need to belong. I was going to say be formed, right? Because we're formed in community. But the reality is, like, we live in a world where belonging is like something that we like so devalue. By the way, I say this as somebody who understands the tension of how constrained our time is. Between my 2 younger sons, they're on 3 different basketball teams. My older son has a job. He's finishing up high school, getting ready for college. He's about to start an internship. There's a lot of requests on our time. But what I don't want for my kids is for them to grow up and think that church was ancillary to everything else. That the community of faith was just a supplement and add-on if we have time to squeeze it in. What I want them to see modeled in my life and the life of other adults around them is that we are committed to what Jesus is doing through the church. Now, understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying that, you take your kids out of travel sports and they shouldn't play on Sundays. That's not what I'm talking about at all. What I'm really talking about is on that Tuesday night when your life group's meeting and you're exhausted from work and all you really want to do is crawl into bed with Nerd gummy clusters and watch TV. I'm on a Nerd gummy cluster kick right now. When all you want to do is like veg out, that's the moment we need to lean into the community. We don't need to teach our kids and the next generation that all this other Jesus stuff, that's add-on to the stuff that you really want to do. It's got to be a priority. We have to belong. The third challenge for us would be invitational. This is something I've wrestled with over the years. I've shared the story before, but basically coming out of COVID in 2020, we kind of restructured our entire church. Like we went all in on the idea we want to help people become more like Jesus. And there's a lot of work that we've done behind the scenes to kind of create a community where people can feel at home, people can feel safe, and we know that people are growing to become more like him. But now I think is this season where now we actually have built something that's worth inviting people to be a part of. And so it would be easy to have this for ourselves, but now we have to be the kinds of people who are willing to invite others to experience the same story. What if the person you're praying for is one invite away from having the same story that Ryan has? And by the way, this is not even about getting people to church. Like, I know how to pack out this room. I just offer free Reformation beer next Sunday. This place will be packed out, okay? Like, this is really about us growing to the point where our faith is not about ourselves, but now we're inviting other people, the people who are thirsty and longing for more, to find that in Jesus. I have one more point I want to make, but I do want to leave some time for Q&A. So just a reminder on our Q&A time, they're questions, not comments, relatively quick and to the point and relevant to what we are talking about. So if you have a question, you can raise your hand. Mr. Adam will be around with the microphone. Going once, going twice. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Everyone pay attention, because the first part of what I'm about to say, you're going to be like, I've heard this a million times before, and you're going to zone out. But the last thing I'm going to say is different. So for those of you who are new, every week we end our time with a time of communion. So we have 4 communion stations around the room, and on one half we have the crackers and juice, the body and blood of Jesus. On the other half we have slips of paper. You can write a prayer and put it in the prayer jar, or light a candle, because throughout church history that's represented offering a prayer to God. That's the old part. Here's the new part. You guys see over here? It's blasphemy. There's a Christmas decoration in the auditorium before Thanksgiving. I'm passionate about it. Thanksgiving is the best holiday. We don't even give it its due, right? There's football, which is awesome. There's food, which is amazing. Family, that's great. And some of you were decorated at Labor Day, and I'll just say I'm praying for you, okay? We're not this, but this is how important this is for me, that we would bring out a decoration before Thanksgiving. Because according to some recent studies, what they have said is that of people who do not regularly attend church, okay, these are the people like the Ryans of the world. Of those people, 56% would attend a service in the Christmas season if somebody would just invite them. 56% of the people who don't go to church would come on Christmas Eve or December 14th for the kids' production or on Above and Beyond. They would come sometime if somebody would just invite them. And so I want to have a visual representation of what it looks like to actually be willing to be invitational. So during this time of response, I want to invite you that I'm sure that there's somebody in your life you've been praying for, somebody you would love to see come to this relationship with Jesus. And so you can go up to that station, and in the bowl there are these Christmas ornaments, and they have glitter. So I'm going to do my best not to spill the glitter, because right next to these ornaments, there are these pieces of paper. So if there's somebody that you've been praying for, somebody that you would commit to invite to being a part of what God is doing at Bridgepoint sometime over this Christmas season, just write their name on the slip of paper and then roll it up. Okay? No one's going to see that name. That'll be confidential. And then you're going to unscrew the ornament without spilling glitter. Then you will put the name inside the ornament, and you can hang it on the tree. So as you can see in first service already, there's a number of names there. And why are we doing that? So I won't know the specific names, but our leadership team is committed to praying over each and every one of these. These are all people that we are praying for the rest of this calendar year. And then starting next week, this is going to be in the lobby. And when you have invited your person, there are little bows on that station that I would invite you to take a bow and to put it on an ornament. You may remember where you put yours exactly, you may not, but put it on. So every bow represents somebody that has been invited, that we're praying that God will lead them here. The people that don't have bows are people that we are praying for, that the people who are committed to them would have the courage and strength to invite them. But we're going to be committed to that over the rest of this year. Does that make sense? All right, so here in our time with Jesus, the two questions I want us to consider today. The first one is this: how can I be anchored? Are there things in your life that you need to do? Like, listen, don't wait till January. Don't say, I'll start the Bible reading plan January 1st. I'll get to fasting. Whatever it is, don't wait. Be anchored today. The second thing, who can I invite? There are neighbors, family, friends. Listen, the person you're praying for may live in another state, but I guarantee you the person who works next to you at the office, somebody in their family's been praying for them for years. You can be the answer to that person's prayer through an invite this Christmas season. Mission is not a thing, it's a person. Who could you invite this Christmas season? Would you bow your heads and close your eyes with me? Jesus, we just come before you right now. We're thankful. We're thankful that even through the storms of this life, even through the valleys, even through the seasons of discouragement, that you are still working and moving. We trust today that your victory through your death and resurrection was enough. And so we just first thank you for that. Second, I pray that you would put people in our minds and on our hearts, that we would be able to invite, to experience you. I pray for each and every one of these names already up, the ones that will be there in just a minute. I pray that your Spirit would guide and move over each of these invites, that you would use a simple request like that to bring people into a relationship with you. And as we take this step of obedience, that you would continue to shape us and change us to be more like you. It's in your name I pray.